Today, the people on top are doing phenomenally well, and we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had in the history of this country. You got 3 people who own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. That is bad from a moral perspective, and it's bad from an economic perspective.
But Russian oligarchs are close associates of the central government who took over state-run industries.
Right.
The people you're talking about, the so-called American oligarchs, are self-made entrepreneurs who created big businesses that employ millions of Americans.
Right.
So it's always both frustrating and hilarious watching and listening to older conservatives not be able to understand that 2 things can be true at once. For instance, watching Chris Wallace talk about the Walton family.
Sam Walton had $25 billion net worth when he died. And obviously you'd be upset about that. On the other hand, Sam Walton built Walmart. Let me finish there. Built Walmart, which is the biggest single private employer in the United States. It employs 1.5 billion Americans. Are you saying the country would be better off without people like Sam Walton and businesses like Walmart?
How Walmart was spawned and created so many jobs, but then he doesn't go into how Walmart's typically, shut down smaller businesses and communities, how they don't pay people well, how they're actually not really run very well, simply because they have so much dominance over the market. But people like Chris Wallace, who are very wealthy, they're not multi-billionaires. So to them, they think that they still have higher up the ladder to go. Or when he talks about how his son works at Blackstone, that completely nullifies everything else that the company does that puts too much pressure on the economy.
You want to talk about oligarchy? You got 3 Wall Street firms, Blackstone, State Street, and Vanguard, that control assets of $20 trillion. They are the major stockholders in over 90% of the S&P 500 companies.
But wait. But when you're talking about Blackstone, for instance, and I happen to know about it because my son works there, they are investing the money of the teachers' funds, so public employees' funds. Those are real people who are getting their pensions.
But what I'm talking about, you asked me about oligarchy, I'm talking about power.
We talked about how Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, he's laying off tens of thousands of people. Why? Well, because Meta literally hoarded huge portions of the job market, overpaid people just in case they would need them later. Now, if that's not too much power, then I don't know what is. Literally being able to hoard portions of the job market, and when things go awry, you just let people go, and he's still in the position that he's in. But as we all know, corporate Democrats, Republicans, and of course the media always tend to go with the side of capital. Not given the fact that over 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, like Bernie Sanders pointed out, the fact that Americans are literally drowning in trillions of dollars worth of debt.
But what I am suggesting, and not only suggesting what I believe to be true, and the facts back it up, is you got a small number of people in this country, Chris, who have enormous power over our political life and our economy. And the results is massive income and wealth inequality. Over 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. People on top doing phenomenally well.
Americans frequently skip out on different types of healthcare procedures because they simply can't afford them. People go into debt, into bankruptcy over healthcare costs. People can't afford education. The cost of rent, mortgages are going up every single year. Inflation is out of control. But meanwhile, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So again, it's always frustrating to listen to people not be able to understand that 2 things can be true at once. But when you're part of the upper class, and not just the upper class, but the super upper class, you swimming in millions of dollars or more, you tend to think that, well, you made it, so why can't all these other people? You made X, Y, and Z choices, so why can't all these other people? But at the end of the day, the real Americans, middle class workers know the issues that we face.
So let me get you an answer from you. How much is enough?
I think we should go back to the tax policies, the radical tax policies that exist under that communist president, Dwight D. Eisenhower. What do you think about that? That if you make a whole lot of money, you're going to pay a whole lot of taxes.
And as Bernie was pointing out, in the days of Republican Dwight D. Eisenhower, the top marginal tax rate was over 90%. And it goes without saying we're nowhere near that now, and we're not going to go back towards that anytime soon. Former President Donald Trump, when he took the corporate tax rate and knocked it down to 21% from 35%, Joe Biden got in office and he didn't even want to put it back up to where it was. So we don't have anyone in Congress or the Senate who's in any position to really push the ball forward with any type of force at the moment. But the movement that Bernie Sanders has helped to create absolutely isn't going anywhere, because millennials and Gen Z are pretty much all on board with the same types of policies, because we all suffer from the same types of struggles. Poll the country, no matter what it is, whether it's on healthcare, education, gun reform, pretty much everybody is more or less on par, more or less in agreement. So I thought that this was a really interesting look at how the media, corporate Democrats, and always Republicans are doing everything they can to protect capital.